And so you talked about like aspirations of, personal aspirations, religious aspirations, whatever it is. He, I think it's around around the dog scene. There's this line where he talks about hope, and he says something like, "It's an instinct that only." I think I have it here. Hope was an instinct only the reasoning human mind could kill. An animal never knew despair. Watching her wounded progress, he had a sense that this had happened daily, perhaps for weeks. He was watching one of the well rehearsed effects of the day, like a bird song in happier regions. And so how do you think hope ties into this notion of pride, humility, and power and glory?
There's also another part in the novel where the whiskey priest is really at the bottom of the barrel. He has like nowhere else to run and is getting sick, and yet he describes himself as feeling happy in that moment. And he remarks how it's so odd that even in moments of the most extreme suffering, the human mind can find the ability to be hopeful and to find that sense of happiness. And the passage you described is another instance, but they are fairly rare in the book. There's in the very beginning, this dentist character, one of the side vignette characters, is watching a boat sail away, a boat that the whiskey priest could have used to escape, but he got called away to duty, so was unable to. And on that boat is a woman singing happily. And it's like this image of this boat leaving, right? Like happiness is departing the book from that point forward. And throughout, I think that we have to understand that most of this story is very bleak, and yet there are moments where humans can be hopeful despite all the suffering that they're going through. I do think that it's inversely correlated to pride, though, in a way that again reinforces this idea that for the priest to really achieve his catharsis and to really get to where he needs to go, he has to shed those levels of pride to find a place of compassion and maybe in some sense hope. Then again, I don't know if I'd be interested in what you think, like how hopeful the ending is, if we want to touch on that here. But up to you if we want to punt that for later in the conversation.
Well, so you're wondering about at the end of the novel, after the so yeah, why don't you tell like what happens in the third act of the play?
So we have an awesome confrontation. It was really my favorite part of the book, where we get the two kind of life philosophies head to head in a debate of sorts. But when the lieutenant finally captures the priest, and the lieutenant, he's very much about his stoic duty. He's not going to just kill the priest on the spot. He's going to have a fair trial, which probably isn't a very fair trial, but at least go through the motions of what that would look like and eventually put the priest to death. And it's in this final conversation where I think it's the most important part of the novel. And also we have like these amazing quotes from the priest about where pride interfered in the past and how he got to this place now. He says, the other priest was right. He's talking about this priest that renounced his robes, decided to get married, is no longer practicing. And he says, it was when he left that I began to go to pieces. One thing went after another. I got careless about my duties. I began to drink. It would have been much better, I think, if I had gone too, because pride was at work all the time, not the love of God. Pride was what made the angels fall. Pride's the worst thing of all. I thought I was a fine fellow to have stayed when the others had gone, and then I thought I was so grand I could make my own rules. I gave up fasting, daily mass, I neglected my prayers. It was all pride, just pride because I'd stayed. I wasn't any use, but I stayed. And it's in this moment when he is showing the lieutenant that he's a very different type of priest than what this lieutenant has thought of. In the lieutenant's mind, and the lieutenant's been chasing this image of a priest. He has one photo of this whiskey priest when he was young, and he imagines what this priest would look like. And he imagines someone who's spoiled and rich and takes advantage of people. And then all of a sudden, he has this person in front of him, not just an image, not just a symbol, but an actual person who's telling him, I am a deeply flawed human being. And in that conversation, I think that's where the lieutenant starts to question himself a little bit. And these two lifestyles, these two life philosophies kind of hit each other in a way where both are shaken in a way that maybe wasn't wasn't possible before, at least for the lieutenant.
Mm. Yeah, it just it's another example of, the lieutenant is going off of this photo, and it's a photo of the priest as a young man, and that's when we kind of discussed the whiskey priest when he was younger was a far more prideful person than he is throughout the course of this novel. He still shows some elements of being overly prideful, but then they confront each other, and the lieutenant realizes, okay, this guy is not a demon, he's a human, and he's trying to do good things, and he says things that he basically calls himself like a terrible priest, and they come across as very humble, and he's a mockery of the service and things like that, and it just leaves both sides feeling like they've lost rather than one feeling there's the line, it might be after the trial and everything, but the lieutenant's talking about how he had a dream, and in this dream all he hears is laughter, and there's a passage in this passageway, it's like a hallway, there's no door in it, and it's just like he's going to keep hunting these priests, keep going down this corridor forever, and there's no escaping it because he's on this path, and he's going to have to keep hunting. The priests are going to keep popping up. There's no way of leaving unless he changes something about himself.
And I think even at the end of the novel, so he has this show trial, and the whiskey priest, as expected, and as the whiskey priest fully expected, is shot to death. And it's important to note here too that the whiskey priest, when he was finally met by the lieutenant, he was led by another character in the book, who was referred to as a half caste, another example of the duality of man that Green is playing with here, who's a Judas-like figure who tells the priest, you have to hear the confession of this dying American, and the priest knows it's a trap, but he still goes to his fate, and he ends up dying. And at the end of the book, it's the lieutenant who is having this dream, and he realizes that there's still going to be priests to catch, and yet there's a hollow feeling to his ambition now. It no longer has the sense of all-consuming purpose that is worth it. There's a question mark now in his mind about what am I actually living for, and what is my purpose on this planet.
Do you think this is something we maybe even talked about it before, just outside of the podcast? In this world, there's no doubt that it's becoming less religious than ever, and people are also claiming to feel less purpose than ever. And so it seems like there's a pretty clear line between people having religion and having a sense of purpose. And I even noticed that myself in my own life. If I were, sometimes I wish I were a deeply religious person. It would be so easy. Like, you have this set of rules that you just need to follow and believe in, and it frees you up. My friend says commitment is freedom. And I think that's brilliant in its own way, because if you're committing to the rules of Christianity or Judaism or whatever it is, that's there. And you don't have to constantly be flying around deciding what is right and what is wrong. And then also going out and writing and hanging out and being a human out in this world. It's just like this added layer of challenge that I guess that's not a problem that we're challenging ourselves, but it is an interesting comment. And I think something that he's maybe pushing on is like, when there's no religion, what's there? It's going to leave behind this sense of rudderlessness.